All right, welcome back, everyone. Have an amazing guest on today. He's part of the kind of he's doing a lot of things out there, one rental at a time. He's in the school community. He's also doing rent by the room, but he's doing all kinds of amazing stuff out there. So welcome, Jarrod.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, man, I'm glad to connect. I mean, I see you in all the chats and the Frank's Zoom meetings and everything. So I think this is going to be fun. I know you have some witty, dry humor also. So I think this is going to be very interesting. But why don't you fill my audience in a little bit about your story?
Well, my story is a little different. I I was in corporate America for 23 years. I was a mid-level IT manager at Intel, and every time I moved up that rung, I got more and more pissed off at taxes. So this is no coincidence that in April of 2023, I got fed up, man. I got so upset, and it just so happens that exact same time my mom had a stroke. She's since passed away a couple months ago, but which I'm grateful that I got the time to spend with her before she passed. But those things all sort of happened at once, and so I didn't leave Intel until August. But April, the tax hit was just really upsetting me. So I actually wasn't looking to get into real estate or even investing, to be honest with you. I was part of the my generation that hey, you go to school, you get a good job, and you work hard, and that's the way it is, right? And so it took me 23 years to figure out that's not the way to do it. So I'm
Yeah,
a
that's all
slow
of
learner.
us, man. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a slow learner, man. So I was like, and I actually owe our federal government and state government a big thank you because the taxes pissed me off so much so that I was like, all right, I'm done with this. So I started doing research and I found Tax Free Wealth by Tom Wheelwright. And I know everybody else's book is Rich Dad Poor Dad, which, by the way, Tom Wheelwright is the accountant for Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad. But that's how I got in, was simply
Yeah, I have it
taxes.
somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got the Rich Dad Poor Dad one, but I just was upset with taxes, and so I was just trying to find a way to mitigate taxes. And that book, man, it was weird. It was so clear to me. That little $14 book single-handedly changed my mind. If I ever meet Tom Wheelwright, I'm gonna get arrested because I'm gonna go up to him and give him a big kiss. I'm gonna give him a big old kiss on the cheek, give him a hug, and he's gonna be like, "Who's this psycho?"
Well,
But
I hope Zuber invites him then to the next event, and
oh
then I
yeah,
want to see this happen. That's why.
oh man, that guy, I love that guy, and I've never met him or anything. But yeah, so I read that book. It instantly clicked with me. I couldn't put it down, and so I just started doing research and digging into it. And I joined a couple other mentorships. I joined the Gator community from Pace Morby, and then I joined Sub Two from I joined Sub Two more or less for the networking portion, not the Sub Two piece. We got intertwined there, and I started doing private money lending. Not, I mean, to make money, obviously, but it was more or less to learn, right? I figured, all right, I have no knowledge, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Let's get in the middle of the buyers and the sellers, and get in the middle of that whole world and learn from it. Might as well make a buck along the way. So that's what I did. I got into private money lending, and I'm still doing that, although I just typically work with my repeat borrowers at this point. But I learned a lot from those guys, some movers and shakers, how they were doing things, and I just wanted to be exposed to real estate basically. And then as time went on, I originally was going to do a couple other things, and I settled on co-living for the cash flow mainly because I figured, hey, if I'm going to be leaving my job eventually, because I did leave in August, that I'm going to need cash flow to survive, right? So we have other things out there, but the co-living or the pad split is what I'm doing, is what's doing it for us. But then I sort of supercharged it a little bit. I'll go high level, and you can dig into what you want. Um, we've bought three houses. Our current portfolio is 25 units. We bought three houses in the last 7 months, and then stopped because of you. Thank you, by the way. I was going to go on to a path that was going to probably not be good because I'm learning along the way here, and it's better to learn with as you go rather than jump into everything and then learn. Oh, I made a mistake here and there. So thank you. I hadn't even met you and learned that from you.
Well, it's amazing what you're doing because at least, like mine were more just kind of buy and hold long-term, hold, but you're putting more work on your plate, right? In a sense, you're
Yeah.
doing right by the room, so that's even more challenging. So
It
I,
is, but it's what David Green on Bigger Pockets says is the juice worth the squeeze. So in the market, like I looked nationwide and I was looking at Arizona, Texas, Florida, and North Carolina, South Carolina. And I still like North Carolina, but I haven't done anything there yet. But Florida, after a couple, 2, 3 weeks, I knocked off the list. Texas, same thing for insurance and taxes and all that. But then it turned out it's actually pretty smart going on. What's going on right now? So I got lucky on that deal. but Arizona was closer too. So it's 2.5 hour, 2 hour flight for me. I'm in Oregon. So I live in Oregon. I invest in Arizona, in the co-living space. And so if I bought a normal 4 or 5 bedroom house, um, it would break even, right? If, long-term rental, whatever, even the midterm slash, co-living. So what I decided to do was sort of supercharge it. So I was looking for my particular buy boxes, in case anybody's listening out there, 2,000 square feet or better. This is in Phoenix metropolitan areas like, Phoenix, Glendale, Chandler, Gilbert, Arizona Mesa, or Scottsdale Mesa. Scottsdale I can't afford though. Is 2,000 square foot or better, no HOA, no pool, and plenty of parking. And those are hard to find, especially when there's no supply. And the reason I need that square footage is because what I do is I go into the house, I find the areas that can be turned into bedrooms, and I do that, right? So I have a couple contractors I work with. They go in. It's about $5,000 per room, and add 5 grand on top, so about 25 grand for 4 rooms, if somebody cares. So, I turn like the living room, the dining room, the Arizona room, whatever I can into bedrooms, and then rent by room, right? So the way it works for me is there's some tax reasons why I wanted to buy a house that's 400K or better. And Dion has gone into this on his channel as well. Dion Talk Financial Freedom for anybody's listening. But I'm doing the same thing. I mean, I could have done, the Gary, Indiana thing or somewhere else and buy like, 20 homes and cash flow a couple $100 here and there. But I'm also looking for that depreciation for taxes. So for me, I had to get a house that was worth a little bit more, 400K in Arizona, for that depreciation. So, and it worked too, because I ran a pilot, and then our returns are pretty good, because I offset a lot of that income from that W-2 that I had. So that was great. But yeah, go in there, build rooms, rent by room. And then what was I going to say? The income from that is such that the 4 bedrooms pays the mortgage in my area. The fifth bedroom basically pays the utilities, and then the sixth, seventh, and eighth is all profit. It basically works out to be that way. And all my houses are 8 bedrooms. So I haven't bought anything yet that I couldn't make at least an 8 bedroom. And I don't really want 9 or 10 either, because 8 people in a house is quite a few, which is why bathrooms are key. So I'm a 2.5 bathroom or more. 3 is even better. So I do have one that's a 2 bedroom or 2 bath, and another one that's 2.5, another one that's 3. But the first one I bought was the 2 bath. I did try to add another bathroom, but it was cost prohibitive, so I didn't do it. And it's worked out okay, because that particular house where it's at, there's a lot of medical and different things where people work different hours. So the bathroom hasn't been that big of a deal there. It's been pretty nice.
So how did you go down that path? Because I hear more people talking about like doing midterm rentals, short-term rentals, increasing, cash flow. So did you look at all three different scenarios and you decided that that was the best for whatever you're trying to do?
I did originally. I was actually looking at, so from a cash flow perspective, the traveling nurses was my primary, right? So I was looking at Texas and Florida for that reason. So Texas has 22 level 1 trauma centers, Florida has 9. So I kind of, once I learned those stats, I kind of migrated to Texas, but the property taxes and other things as an out of state investor, like if I was local and had the resident status, it might be different for at least the primary, the first house. But being out of state, that property tax was going to kill me, and I didn't like that. So, for example, the Arizona house, I pay what I pay for my primary in Oregon in 1 month is what I pay all year in Arizona. Right? It's insane. So it was from a property tax perspective, it was a good deal, especially versus Texas. But then I had shifted because I wanted to see something into the future, and so eventually the traveling nurses they're going to catch up. It's expensive to pay for those nurses. So I think they said something by 2029, 2030, they're going to catch up. And granted, that's a long way out, and who knows, probably won't even be doing even the pad split by then. But I didn't want to see that horizon disappear on me, like the Airbnb folks and that kind of thing. So I thought, all right, well, what else is there? And then I through some of my lending practices, I found a guy that was doing co-living, not pad split, but co-living. Hey, what the hell is this? So then I went down the path of sober living, all the different community household things, and then I settled on pad split. Part of that reason was I'm out of state, right? And pad split will take care of now for a price, but they'll take care of all the people side of it, and then all I have to do is maintain the property. Now that's not actually true. You're going to get involved with the people. I don't care who you are, if you care about your product or my service. So, but large part, they handle that front end. And being a new investor and not having any clue on what I was doing, I wanted that knowledge and that front end piece. And I also took that same mindset and went. You want to talk about trying to find a needle in a haystack? I was trying to find a realtor at being out of state that was invested in pad split. and I found him. I'm going to give a shout out to Stephen Gomez. He's an awesome realtor. I bought 2 houses with him. And then the third one wasn't even on the market, but he helped me negotiate it even still. I mean, the guy's just that cool of a dude. And we'll probably end up partnering or something at some point. But anyway, he was the number 3 pad split in Arizona because Arizona started pad split, or pad split started in Arizona, I think January of 2023. So he was the number 3 guy, and he'd been, telling me what he had learned and, some of his, practices, even though he was brand new also. But hey, man, every little bit helps. So
So, Airbnb, a lot of times right now, it's getting a lot of pushback, regulations, restrictions. Is that something you think this pad split or rent by the room is facing as far as like state by state? Is there a lot of regulations you got to be aware of?
So there technically are regulations, and different municipalities have different rules, but the difference is the cities and the government entities want this. They need this, right? Like that's the other reason I decided, hey, Airbnbs, it's not needed. It's a nice to have. Traveling nurses is nice. But this is something that's actually needed, and it's a double whammy. At first I didn't want to do it. I thought, oh, this is crazy. You're treating people poorly, blah, blah, blah. Until I went down to a couple of the Phoenix RIA, the ASRIA meetings in Arizona. I'd fly down a lot. Even though I live in Oregon, I had the time, so why not? So I was down there, got to meet a lot of people, and I got to meet some of the people living in the Stephen Gomez and Ellis Tran from Pad Split had a guy that showed up that was a Pad Split member, like living in the houses. And the guy, he was so thankful that that service existed. That's what did it for me. I was like, wow, man, like this is, and by the way, before I joined the army, I lived in my car. So I would have done something like this. It didn't exist when I was a kid. So it's a good service. It's essentially a really inexpensive way to live for a certain amount of time or forever if you want. But I've got people. She just bought a house. One of my renter or members had been living there since the start, and she was doing it to save up, working 3 jobs as a nurse. I mean, she was just killing it, and she finally saved up enough to where she moved out. She said she was buying a house, not in Arizona. She's moving, I think, Texas or somewhere. But I mean, that's another route. I've got the people that are in the houses aren't what you think. I've got some construction workers. I've got an insurance agent, a couple nurses, a medical driver. I've got, this is kind of weird. I don't know why this happened, but one of my houses, 3 people that live there all work at some of the local sandwich shops, which is odd. And they don't drive. So it's perfect because it's close enough for them to ride bikes or whatnot. So that is a weird thing that's going on. But so it's just interesting too to learn what people are doing, and it probably won't be forever, but it's a short-term thing for them to get on their feet or save up or whatever it is they're doing. Or in the case of the guy that showed up to the meet, he was essentially homeless, and so he really couldn't afford to do anything, even rent. Like a studio in the markets around there, I think the cheapest is around 1,200 or maybe 1,000, let's say. But you got to remember, you get your first and last and your deposit and all utilities. So with Pad Split, or at least with me and Pad Split, what they're doing is we're charging a fixed rate, right? So it's roughly around $200 a week. So say $800 a month. But I pay utilities, I pay for internet, I pay for cleaning, all that stuff. So we can supercharge somebody's living costs or downsize their living costs pretty good.
You kind of touched on it also. I mean, like I was going to ask you, like, what would be maybe the average length of stay for most of the tenants? I mean,
Mm. So Pad Split will tell you, and Ellis, if you're listening, don't get mad at me, but they'll tell you 8 to 9 months. All the hosts I've talked to now, I granted I've only been at this since January 2024, so I don't have a year under my belt yet on the Pad Split. I did run an Airbnb, by the way, last year. I did that for tax purposes though, and if you want, I can get into that. And it was a good move. I have awesome lawyers, KKOS lawyers, Matt Sorensen and Mark Kohler, great guys. And then my Kevin Kennedy's my lawyer, and then Jeff Nash is my CPA. So all those guys are awesome, my team, and they're not cheap, but their cost has paid for themselves. I don't know, 10 times over. Awesome. But anyway, sorry, I kind of lost track. You said something that I got off track on the
just the length of stay. Like,
oh,
what do
length
you?
of stay. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they say it's 8 to 9 months. Mine has been about, I'd say on average, probably 4 months. But then again, I'm new. I haven't consolidated my area, so I have one house in Glendale, Arizona, and then 2 other houses in Phoenix. And then I wanted to be in one area, but I'm learning that those are great markets for this play. But I'm doing something a little weird here, Mark. Yes, I'm doing Pad Split and I'm doing it for cash flow for now. But I told you I go and I do construction. I am doing that, but what I'm doing is I'm doing it in such a way that it can be taken down later if need be. So I'm going and adding walls, ducting, putting air conditioning into the rooms, electrical if needed, blah blah blah. But let's say 5, 10 years from now, inflation goes crazy. Shocker if it does. But and the house is worth more, and I need to. A secondary plan would be to tear the walls down and put it back the way it was and sell it as a regular home or whatnot if I need to. Some of the other hosts in the area are doing stuff like adding a second kitchen and putting 12 bedrooms in and hacking up the house. And I'm just not all about that. So I'm trying to keep it to where if I needed to, I could pivot back, keep my options open, if you will. I know it's adding a lot of bedrooms, 8 bedrooms in a house is a lot, but the layout is such that it sounds worse than it is. And it works out pretty good, especially with people's work schedules. So
So it sounds, I mean, like you got to have software that you use. I mean, this sounds like you're pretty active, you're involved quite a bit. Like how do you deal with the cleaning and maybe tenant turnover? Like what kind of software do you use for?
pads. So I originally was going to use Rent Ready because I was going to do co-living without pad split. And it's kind of, I don't know, a blessing or a curse. I don't know. I was going to run it because I'd been in Sam Wiegert's class, right, and attended his. Sam Wiegert's been doing co-living for 14, 15 years at this point. And he does a rent by room, but he does it with an annual lease and he doesn't furnish the rooms, right? And he tries to build communities in the house. And I thought, hey, that's great. I was going to do that too, until I found out about they'll call it the short term rental loophole, but it's not a loophole. It's actually in the tax code. So I'd shifted gears and took that house after I did the construction as an 8 bedroom and ran it as a short term rental through Airbnb simply for the tax code. It's legal. Just talk to your lawyers or whatnot. Actually, you only have to run it as a short term rental one time and you have to materially participate. So I did that, but I rented it out 3 times, shut it down, waited the month of December, and then January 1st flipped it over to co-living. So I didn't, mingle the two in the same tax year. And that was a good move because my cost segregation, I was able to offset quite a bit of my W-2 income doing that because I couldn't qualify. I technically could have qualified for the real estate professional on paper, but remember, I didn't leave the job till August on paper. So I'd left a little bit before then, not officially. And so I was looking at that from an IRS perspective, saying, "Hey, here's this clown. He made 315K, and then now he's claiming real estate professional. How the hell did he spend all that time? Blah blah blah." So I didn't want to deal with it. So I just shifted gears and talked to the lawyers, and they said, "Hey, look," and the accountants they said, "Hey, look, you can do this as a short term rental." So that's what I did.
You kind of touched on it earlier too, like as far as so taxes is the reason why you just were fed up with taxes.
Yeah,
Now, sorry to hear about your mom, like you
yeah.
mentioned, but was it because of what happened with her estate or assets, that type of taxes, or what you're getting taxed on your income, you're saying?
No, so my parents, my dad's retired army, and my mom was a hairdresser. So there was no like estate, if you will. There's like, I mean, so it helped in a way, or didn't help. I'll say it impacted me in a way because right then and there, when my mom had the stroke, and she's a very proud woman, so she didn't want any help. I live in Oregon, Arizona. Asked her to move up here several times. She wouldn't do it. We have family down there. She wouldn't move in with them either. She's just very proud and stuff. So living on her own, and there's a whole other story there that's pretty dramatic. But she was basically unconscious for 2 days until there's a whole police story and a place where she worked. The lady knew something was wrong, and she went and found out and found her and everything. Called anyway, got her in the hospital. But no, not. It was kind of all at once. I mean, it was a whirlwind, right? Like I was pissed off about taxes. My mom had a stroke. I had to be there for her because it's what you do, right? And also looking at both my parents' retirement situations. Now, my mom didn't have any retirement saved up, and was still working at 73. My dad had saved up a ton of money, and he's been living off it, and he's exhausted it all. I don't think he expected to live this long. And so the cost of retirement is nursing homes, things like that, because he lived with us for a long time. He lived in a nursing home for a while, and then around here, and then a company came and bought it out and turned it in. It used to be a mom and pop. It was great. Got bought out by some big company, and so then we found him another mom and pop, and then that got bought out again. I was like, Dad, just move in with me. So he did for like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. And then it got to the point where we couldn't care for him. So all of that influenced this as well. So retirement for me, like if I stayed at that job, I was actually on target to get promoted. Right. Again, I'd just been promoted 2 years prior. I was a regular individual contributor IT geek, and then moved into management. And then a couple years later got promoted to second level. And then I was on track to get promoted again. And that actually scared me because I looked at those guys. I'm a pretty happy guy, you know what I mean? But looking at those guys, the stress level and the amount, you can imagine Intel's a pretty stressful place, right? And you don't have one job, you have like 10 different jobs. And the higher you go up the stack, the more pressure. And I just, man, it scared me. I was like, I don't want to do that. And there's the retirement's not that great. So, all of those things happening at once sort of, I didn't have another choice. And I just said, hey, man, this is what I want to do. I want to save money on taxes and build that wealth over time and then, get out of the corporate grind.
Yeah, I think there's always some moment that kind of just flips the switch for most of us. And same thing. Like I kind of touched off camera, but my dad had a stroke. Probably about 15 years ago now, and he's still with us, but he's paralyzed on the right side, and just things like that, right? He actually probably didn't even get to enjoy retirement. Like he pretty much worked till he had a stroke. I mean, he retired, but he was working contracted out by the same company, so he wasn't doing the same amount of work towards the end. But pretty much a few months after he actually left completely, and he had the stroke, and it makes me kind of think about like, yeah, like, a lot of people they're working. Yeah, yeah, you can enjoy your job, but I mean, is that what you really want to do? Like you're saying when you're, in your
Yeah.
mid 60s or 70s. And so it's very eye opening. And like you said, a lot of us 20, 30 years, we went to school, got a degree, and this is the path that we were headed on. So, and it's great being around this community where everyone is kind of picking it up at different points. I mean, there's people like, 25 house hacking and they're on their third house hack. And I'm amazed at what they're doing. And, even touching on like how old we are now, but you're also trying to build like a social media side, right? Like you
Yeah.
started a
Yeah.
YouTube channel. So how's all of that going?
I do. That is crazy. I am not trying to build it necessarily. I posted my journey along the way, mainly for me to look back on and laugh at myself and learn and this and that. And I didn't know it until you're live, which I don't think I'd ever attended one of those. One of the guys, or you had posted or said something, because I put your channel link on mine a few times saying, hey, this is the guy that saved me from making mistakes and blah blah blah. And he reached on your live. He said, hey, you just passed 500 or something. Like, what? I had no idea, right? And I so I'm not trying to grow the YouTube channel or be monetized or anything. Just trying to document the process and effectively use it as kind of a business card, really. Like, if, hey, this is what I'm doing, and if that's cool, and I'm in the private money lending space, and so some of those guys have wanted to invest with me, and today I've said no, not because of them. It's, well, I'm a little bit of a control freak. I'll just admit that. I want things to run a certain way. There's some things in that space that I'll tell you about. Like, most of the people that are doing this are just buying the house, adding rooms, and calling it good. All the houses we bought, we've redone the kitchen, floors, made it nice, right? I have a theory there that if you provide a nice product, well, this is not a theory, it's business, but provide a nice product and a good service, people will enjoy it more and hopefully stay longer, right? But also they'll treat it better, is my thought, right? Like the broken window theory. I used to be part of a we call it neighborhood watch, and one of the sheriffs would show up and talk about the broken window theory. And if you have a broken window, chances are you're getting another broken window. And in our particular case, it was spray paint. So we just kept pressure washing the spray paint off all the. I bought a pressure washer and kept cleaning it up, and eventually it worked because then the neighborhood stayed clean. Well, the inverse of that I think is true too. Is if I think, and it's working so far, I only have 7 months of data, but if you provide a nice product and keep it clean, that's why I have the cleaning lady. I have, and that took, man, I went through four cleaning ladies until I found one that was good enough, right? And then, I went through accountants too. I went through, I think, 4 or 5 accountants until I found Jeff Nash. That's why I tell his name. He's like, this guy's awesome, and things like that. But yeah, getting your being an out of state investor, I had to really work on that team, right? People that I can count on and that are good and reliable. And I've got a couple handymen and some contractors, and I use them quite a bit. I consider them part of the team. Like I talked about accountants and lawyers and all that, but the maintenance part of the business, if you will, is critical, right?
I think what's important in what you just said there is like you're saying maybe you're, I don't know if you read it the right word, but micromanager or very hands-on, but you understand that about yourself. And I think that's the biggest thing. A lot of people maybe like you, but they don't accept that that's how they are. So they,
Yeah.
they invest and they think like everyone is supposed to think the same way they do, or they're going to do the same thing. And that's where the problems occur. Whereas yourself, you're accepting that that's how you are, but yet you're willing to put in the extra work, or you're going to like you're saying, maybe you have to go through four different cleaners to find the right one, right? So you're not expecting the cleaners to change. You're like, hey, this is what my expectations are, and I'm going to find the one that fits my criteria. So I think
Yeah.
that's super important. And I tell people all the time for investing out of state that numbers can be great, but you got to be able to handle that you're at a distance or these type of things that come up, and know that you can't just drive to that property and see what's going on. So it's really understanding yourself. So
Yeah.
I think that's super important.
Yeah. I have to give credit to Intel on that one. I'm being at a company like that for 23 years, processes, and if you're going to fail, fail fast, right? Intel's big on that, and I'm the same way. Like if it didn't work out, boom, it's not going to work. Let's move on. Let's move on. Move on. And analyze, but don't sit there. I didn't have a problem with analysis paralysis. I actually did pretty good on making a decision and go for it. It's a test, so that's what I did. I ran the numbers, proof of concept, said, all right, let's do one. Did a pilot. The pilot was successful. Boom, let's do another one. It worked out. Boom, let's do another one. Right. And then I'd learned about you because, and actually, I owe credit to Dion and Millennial Mike and Coach Carson because I met them at the Vegas ORAT. And Dion had told me, but I like Dion, but his strategy is different than mine. So I listened to what he said. Millennial Mike has some similars to me as well, but I didn't really listen. But Coach Carson, this guy, I don't know, he's got some social like ninja skills because he looked at me. I was on that. You were there, right? So I was on that top deck with him, and he was talking. He spent 20 minutes with me, which I freaking awesome. And he looked in my eyes, and he knew, he could just tell. He goes, "Look, man, let me explain it to you this way, because I don't think you're getting it. If you go out and buy, because at that time I had one property." He said, if you go out and buy 9 more properties and you made a mistake, you just paid that mistake 9 times. Whereas if you go out and get another property, you learn that you just avoided that mistake 9 times. And that finally sunk in, right? And then I heard your story. I'm like, oh my God. So that's why we slowed down a little bit. Also, because we want to get through the summer and see how the power bills are going, and taking on investors right now, I don't want to do, mainly because I don't want to lose their money, right? I can lose my own money, but I don't want to lose their
Yeah.
money. And out of all the people who've talked to me, there's only 2 that I consider because they're passive, right? They're just, hey, look, man, I just want to do this and you go do your thing. And I was like, okay, that could work, but I want to get through and get some data behind me first, and then see how things go. So
Yeah, Coach Carson is amazing. I think a lot of it might go back to his I feel like it's his college football playing days,
mm-hmm.
or being in that situation where you have so many people that are different. Some people might have more talent, some people are more cerebral on the field, but it's just blending everyone's skills together. I think, like you said, like he seems that he can relate to whoever he's speaking with and kind of change his message to for them to connect with. So yeah, I love sitting down talking with him. But he that
he,
book, yeah. I
he
mean,
probably saved me thousands because
it,
yeah,
well, I wish I talked to him earlier then.
right, yeah.
But
And
yeah,
this
I mean,
guy too, I forgot to mention him,
who's that guy?
lumberjack
Oh,
landlord.
lumberjack. Yeah.
I wear this shirt often. My wife gets sick of washing it. He
You
also
know,
told me, he said, it's a military term, and I was in the army, so I should have known this, but I hadn't heard it. But slow is smooth, and smooth is fast,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And that, I agree with that.
yeah. Yeah, we hear that a lot in the firehouse. There's a lot of guys with like military background, and that's kind of the same thing. It's that same message. A lot of guys, you go to an incident and they're just running around, chicken out their head, and they're kind of trying to do 10 things at one time. And it's just like, okay, you gotta do the steps, get the job done. If you don't finish that job, you can't move on to the next one. It kind of there's a process, like you're saying, and
Yeah.
that's the same thing. So yeah, I love what you're doing. I mean, as far as the whole rent by the room, pad split, what has been the biggest challenge though? Is it dealing with the tenants?
Challenge. I don't know, man. I've been through a lot in my life, so I grew up. The reason I respect money is I didn't have any as a kid, right? So I joined the army so I could get the college fund, and then go to college, just to find out that it only paid for about a year of it. So then I went out and got 3 jobs, worked my way through. And that's the reason I'm upset, is because I did all this because the system had told me that's what you need to do. You need to get a good job so you can, live a good life. And so I couldn't get a good job, because I didn't have a college. So I didn't have the money for college because we didn't have that. So the only way to do it was the army. So my whole life I put into this, and then come to find out, sorry, it's kind of a joke, right? I mean, I was really upset, and it took me a while to get over that. But yeah, I I know I just got off topic again. I'm sorry. I do this. Like my mind,
No,
I can't. It's hard for me to focus on things. That's why I have to. So you'd ask something there, and I kind of got way off topic.
no, it
Sorry.
was
What
just
was it?
about what the biggest challenge
Oh,
with
the challenge. I'm
rent by
sorry.
the room. But yeah,
Yeah, the rent by the room. I'm sorry, man. So I guess there's. I mean, you got your occasional things. Like I was telling you, I got a guy that's smoking weed in the house, and I had to ask him to vacate. And then, of course, he's smoking weed in the house, and this is in Arizona, so the power bill is expensive, and it's summertime, so he leaves the window open because I told him, hey, look, the other members are complaining because the house smells like weed. So what's he do? He leaves the window open for days on end, and then my power bill was $633. So I was like, dude, you got to go, man. So that one sucked. I had a few people. I had one guy that was detoxing. So it's not all rainbows, right? And I knew that going into it. One guy was detoxing. And so luckily his mom was involved and I talked to her. And so she came and got him. So that was cool. No issue there. Had another elderly gentleman that decided to take his scooter on a rampage and just destroy the door and the walls. No big deal. Nothing major there. I guess the biggest challenge was, I guess, really trying to find the homes. Like I must have looked at 1,000 homes. I've only got three, but of those three, we had a few under contract, like I think six or seven under contract. But then luckily my inspector is awesome, and I look for a while to find the inspector. Right, it takes a while to find your people. And this guy saved me thousands too. He found a house I really liked. It was perfect corner lot, big square footage. It was everything I was looking for. Foundation. The house was split down the middle, and I'm not talking a crack. I'm talking 2 inch gap, right, and different things. And I talked to a foundation guy, and he's like, he's been doing it for 18 years. He says, look, man, I can fix it. And all I needed to hear was that first part. Look, man, I was out. So we dished on that house. But biggest challenge, I think, is trying to find the homes in this market. Who starts real estate investing in 2023? Me,
yeah.
right? So it's pretty tough. There's no supply. Digging and digging and digging and looking and looking and looking, especially because I have a very specific buy box, like is insane. Like there's houses out there and you can, and some people are doing it, but the way I see it is parking is key. Right? You have to
Mm.
have, especially in a city like Phoenix or in that surrounding area, nothing's close. You pretty much have to have a car. Now I do have, it turns out that, maybe 20-30% of the people don't have cars, and it works out to where, the place they work is really close, so they can do that, which is good. But in general, parking is a big deal. So finding the houses, I guess, is the biggest deal, right? Like that fit my buy box. That's, like 2,000 square feet or better, no HOA, no pool, plenty of parking. And then I have a little bonus one that I've managed to get 2 out of 3 of, which is solar. I know a lot of people don't like solar. I like solar if it's paid for. And I can tell you that $633 bill in that one house hurts. It's a non-solar house. But my other house, I've had single digit power bills in the summer in Arizona. And that people are going to, I guarantee you, people are watching, going to call BS on that. I'll send you my bill. The reason it is that way is because it's solar, it's paid for, it's 65 kilowatt hour produced a day. But I got lucky. It's grandfathered in before the
Mm.
solar companies figured out how to screw you with the whole, we'll you buy it from us for 12 cents, we'll sell it for you for two, or you sell it back to them for two. This is a 1-to-1. And so that
Ah,
house, yeah, it was built in the 70s, right? So it's or 76. And so I don't know when they did the solar. I should go look it up. But that was a bonus. I didn't even know. I did know it was paid for because I won't buy it if there's a lease on it, or at
yeah.
least if it doesn't make sense and that kind of thing. The other house puts out about 30 kilowatt hours a day, and it's also paid for. So it helps. I still have a 200 and some odd dollar bill in the summer, which is better than 400 and 500 some of the other hosts are paying. But it's also a brick house, and it does have single pane windows on it. And there's a lot of other factors in there. Like power is a big deal. You got to be able to see your utilities. That's why I think I mentioned it earlier. It may sound funny to somebody that's living somewhere that's relatively even, like even here in Arizona, like right now, or in Oregon, it's like 101 today, but that's not normal. Power is not the end of the world. In Arizona, that's why I want to get through the summer and do a dollar cost average and see what my average is going to be. So if I ever do, if I'm going to scale, I mean, I'm going to run out of money at some point. I'm doing the same thing you're doing, taking my 401k funds and exhausting them, but I have to do it in such a way that, like, the rest of the year, I don't want to do that anymore because I'll take a bigger tax hit next year, January 1, then I can turn on the faucet again. But I don't want to take that money out and have that penalty and have that tax hit and blah blah blah. So at some point, if I want to scale, I'm going to have to probably, take on some investors. But I don't want to tell an investor, hey, I have no idea what the power bill is going to be. You know what I mean? And it might be a small portion of whatever it is, but still, it's a piece of it. And in Arizona in the summer, AC bills can be pretty high. So I want to get to the point where I can confidently say I'm within this range. Right now I'm like this, so I don't want to do that. I want to be in a tighter range.
Ah, man, I love what you're doing, man. You're doing some cool stuff out there. I mean, I think the biggest thing that people should look into is that this is not a long-term plan for you, I assume, right? Like
No,
you're saying, you just want it for the cash flow now. This is how you're using it to scale, and then at some point you're going to transition. But it's the same thing as, house hacking, right? People are getting uncomfortable for a short period of time to accelerate their assets, acquiring assets. But that's the same thing you're doing, right? It's a little bit more work, it's a little more headache,
yeah,
but yet that extra cash flow is coming into play, right? So
it's house hacking on steroids
yeah.
because, and then I'm also doing velocity banking to help. All of the stuff I'm doing is like probably too on the extreme side of things. I would say compared to some of the, like if you're just doing long term rentals and breaking even and sitting there for a long time and waiting for the appreciation. I just want it faster than that. So I've gone in and tweaked some things and done some things and on a financing side of things as well. So
Yeah, but let's kind of circle back to like you were talking about earlier too. Is this these are things that we're just not taught when we grow up, right? And we're just taught to go to school and money is that has a certain value. But like you're talking about, there's certain type of things you can do with banking, your credit scores, credit cards, all these different things. These are things that being around or in these groups, like you mentioned, right? Sub two, Gator, one rental at a time, all these communities, everyone is doing different things, right? Or they're learning different skills. And I think that's the number one takeaway here is that, there's, people are always complaining housing is expensive and interest rates are high. And yeah, it definitely is. But at the same time, there's ways that you can kind of maneuver around it or work things out and you figured out a way to make things cash flow for yourself. And I love that, man. That's amazing.
yeah, I didn't realize. I've heard people say this prior to April 2023. Oh, there's plenty of money out there and blah blah blah. I'm like, that's BS. And I've since learned that there is a ton of money out there. And what's weird is I was saying that it turns out I'm one of them. Like I didn't even think about the 401k thing, right?
Yeah.
I thought, well, that's sitting there until 59 and a half. Well, when I left Intel, I took it, put it in a self-directed. Now, yeah, I can't benefit from it right now, but I can lend it out. And so that's what I'm doing, right? And I have a Roth that I use for low risk investments, and then I have a traditional that I use for maybe a little bit more risky, not high risk, but a little bit more risky. So if that one goes south, well, because my Roth, that's the golden goose, man. I don't there's no taxes on that. So
Yeah.
if I get returns on investment, it can just grow tax free.
Yeah, I love it, man. Yeah, we'll dig in deeper to all these things. We'll get you on some lives. I think you'll be great on there. Like we said, I mean, you're pretty witty and you don't mind making fun of people and you don't mind, joking around in there. So I love what you're doing. And yeah, so where can everyone find you before we
I'm
wrap things up?
the YouTube channel is REI Jarrod. It's REIJARROD because my name's spelled Jarrod, and that's pretty much the main place. I am on Facebook, but my last name's kind of a nightmare, so it's
Yeah,
kind of hard.
that's why I didn't even try to say it. I
Yeah,
just say Jared. I was gonna just
yeah,
say I'm not gonna even try.
yeah. So YouTube, I think, is the main place. I am trying to do the Instagram thing, but I'm just I'm older, man. I'm like Dion. I know it's a mistake, and I know it's a mistake, but it's a time commitment. I just haven't.
Yeah.
I've tried a little bit here and there in the Instagram thing, but I don't know, man. I'll stick with the YouTube thing, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you keep doing what you're doing because it's working, man. I love the story and we'll connect and we'll do it again, man.
Yeah, man.
All right,
Thanks.
man. Thanks, man.
Hey, take it easy.
Bye. Bye.